Good morning. I have a riddle for you this morning. Something to think about that's sort of related to today's topic. Here it is. You're locked in a large room filled with treasure. The only way to unlock the door is to put a bucket with exactly 4 pounds of golden coins on a scale. An ounce more or an ounce less and the door won't open. And if you put the bucket on the scale and then just drop in the coins one at a time until you have 4 pounds of them, it won't open that way either. In the room are 2 buckets, one holding 5 pounds of coins and the other holding 3. How are you going to measure out 4 pounds of golden coins and escape from the room? I'm Annie Foerster, minister here at First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church in Fort Worth, Texas. And I'm sure you're wondering why I'm starting the service this morning with a riddle. Not like any church service you've been to before, right? Well, here's the thing. I'm going to be talking about money this morning, and it's not a subject that most people are comfortable with. So I thought I'd get you used to it with a fun riddle. I'm also going to be talking about commitment and what it means to be a people who believe in, who have faith in, being committed to their ideas, their values, and their goals. And don't worry, I'll give you the answer to the riddle before the service ends. But first, let us begin our worship with music from our pianist, Misha Beresnev. And it's a riddle to me how he gets his fingers to move so fast. Come worship with me. Let us covenant with one another to keep faith with the source of life, knowing that we are not our own. Earth made us. Let us covenant with one another to keep faith with the community of resistance, never to forget that life can be saved from that which threatens it by even small bands of people choosing to put into practice an alternative way of life. And let us covenant with one another to seek for an even deeper awareness of that which springs up inwardly within us. Even when our hearts are broken by our own failure or the failure of others cutting into our lives, even when we have done all we can and life is still broken, there is a universal love that has never broken faith with us and never will. And this is the ground of our hope. And the reason we can be bold in seeking to fulfill the promise. Please join me in singing our opening hymn, Answering to the Call of Love, number 1014. Be sure to follow the words because it used to have different words in it that I'm sure you'll recall when you hear the music. Our lead singer this morning is Dan Levine. Dan?
the promise of the Spirit. To the love abide. Corrupted my soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love and join together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love and join together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love and join together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
Each time we light the chalice, we renew our commitment to our Unitarian Universalist faith. With the spark of a match or a lighter, we make it new again, as fresh and surprising as the first day we encountered this spiritual community, and we realize that we are home. We've been celebrating Chalaka since the beginning of January, each week honoring one of our 7 principles, and the 8th, which is proposed, by asking one of our members what the principle means to them. This morning, Tina Harmuth will be talking about our 6th principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Tina?
Happy Chalaka. We're celebrating this uniquely Unitarian Universalist holiday by honoring one of our 7 principles each week. My name is Tina Harmuth. I have taught religious education, and I serve on the Adult Religious Education Committee at First Jefferson. I have chosen principle number 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Our principles are not just ideals that we hold in common. They're tenets that we agree to affirm and uphold, to live by, and to promote in the world. World community, peace, liberty, justice are huge concepts. So what do they mean? And do they need to mean the same thing to all of us in order for us to effectively live the 6th principle and spread its message? I don't think that they do need to mean the same thing to all of us. We can still strive together for something, even having different interpretations of those things. And a world community, the inclusion of all people who are working together for the benefit of all people, surely would cover all of the possible nuances of peace and liberty and justice. Our first principle calls on us to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and to me, that means that we not only accept, but we celebrate our differences, especially when it comes to these complicated ideas, like the ones in the sixth principle. The second principle calls for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and I would think that the world community that we're talking about would require those things in order to be sustainable and endure. All the principles are largely about respect and love, or at least have components of respect and love. The sixth principle is also about hope. It's the one that reminds us why we try to live by the other principles. And I think it's important for us as individuals to consider the concepts in the sixth principle so that we can visualize what we're working towards together. Peace, for instance, is not just an absence of conflict any more than love is just an absence of hate. Peace for you may mean calm and stillness and tranquility and an environment in which to experience those things. It may mean art and music and beauty and family. For other people, the focus for peace might be on abundance and shared resources as the key component, because maybe they've seen the lack of those things and they know that they're an integral part of a peaceful world. For liberty, liberty is about the freedom to pursue your wants and your needs and your interests. The concept of liberty ties into other Unitarian Universalist ideals like the fourth principle, which encourages a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So liberty is obviously not just about physical freedom, though it can mean that too. It's also about freedom of the intellect and freedom of the spirit. What does that look like to you? It doesn't need to be the same thing as what it looks like to me. Justice. The call for justice is loud and vital in the world as it exists today. But the idea of justice, the idea that everyone should receive that which they deserve, is complicated, and our individual perspective of it is colored by our experience. Montesquieu said, "There is no greater tyranny than that which is perpetrated under the shield of law and in the name of justice." A call for justice doesn't always serve justice, and that's something I think it's important to remember. For some people, justice looks like punishment and vengeance. But justice is bigger than punitive measures alone. Justice isn't just about the negative side of people receiving what they deserve. And I think at its finest, it's about all of us receiving the resources, the encouragement, the love, and the peace that we need to reach our potential. Someone reaching their potential benefits not just them, but the people and the community around them. So in celebrating the sixth principle, I'm working on picturing what a world community might look like, and I'm working through what peace and liberty and justice mean to me. And I'm figuring out what I can work on in myself to bring myself more in line with the ideals in the sixth principle, and considering what work may be going on in my community and in the world that supports those values, and how I might be able to take part in those efforts. So, what does world community look like to you? And what are the components of peace and liberty and justice that you think are the most vital? How can you live the sixth principle? I think these are questions worth considering. How do you celebrate being a Unitarian Universalist? Happy Chalaka, everyone.
Thank you, Tina. One of the ways we commit to the goal of world community is to covenant with one another, to promise one another we will make it our spiritual discipline, and to remind each other of the enormity of this task by repeating our covenant each Sunday we are together. Say it with me now. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Thank you. You know, when I began to think about the service this morning, I sought out a snappy title for the sermon, something that would draw you in, inspire you to take the time to listen to what I have to say. And then I thought, no, that isn't necessary. Just the word commitment is a sermon in itself, one of those large positive ideas that come with its own questions. What does it mean to commit to something, an idea, a project, another person, or a group of people? What kind of discipline does it take? Where do you start? How do you know when you're finished? So I just called this morning's service Commitment. No flourishes, no cleverness. And I'm not going to suggest a question for you to ponder either. Choose from any one of those I've already mentioned, or stick with the one that came up for you when I first announced the topic. Commitment. Do you have the courage? Here's another question. Will I answer all your questions in the coming hour? Probably not. That makes the topic all the more powerful because you'll be asking questions of yourself for days to come. Questions I haven't responded to. Questions you hadn't even considered until I opened up the whole idea of it. If we were together here in this same room, we could toss back and forth questions and answers alike. What a conversation that will be someday. Promise me we will have it one day soon. In the meantime, I have a story for all ages. It's called The Star Thrower. It's a famous story by Lauren Isley. You may have heard it before. Once upon a time, there was a wise man who used to go to the ocean to do his writing. He had a habit of walking on the beach before he began his work. One day, as he was walking along the shore, he looked down the beach and saw a human figure moving like a dancer. He smiled to himself at the thought of someone who would dance to the day. And so he walked faster to catch up. But as he got closer, he noticed that the figure was that of a young man, and that what he was doing was not dancing at all. The young man was reaching down to the shore, picking up something small, and throwing it into the ocean. He came closer still and called out, "Good morning. May I ask what it is that you are doing?" The young man paused, looked up, and replied, "I'm throwing starfish into the ocean." "Well, I must ask then, why are you throwing starfish into the ocean?" asked the somewhat startled wise man. And to this the young man replied, "The sun is up and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them in, they'll die." Upon hearing this, the wise man commented, "But young man, do you not realize that there are miles and miles of beach, and there are starfish all along every mile? You can't possibly make a difference." At this, the young man bent down, picked up yet another starfish, and threw it into the ocean. As it met the water, he said, "I made a difference to that one." Yeah, the star thrower is a classic story of the power within each one of us to make a difference in the lives of others. It is a powerful reminder that we should be here for each other and to seek to help, even in small ways whenever we can. In such turbulent times as these, when we may feel alone and small and unable to make any lasting changes, we might find ourselves asking, what can I do that will make a difference? Or what can one small person like me do? In reality, we don't have to be rich, talented, or even particularly intelligent to make a difference in the life of another. We just need to remember that we are here for a purpose, and that making small changes in the world eventually add up to something bigger in the life of another. When we become the throwers of the stars, we too have the power to change the world. This is my first response to the questions about commitment. Where to start? Well, commitment is clearly a promise you make to give yourself to something worthy. But it brings up another question. What does it mean to give yourself. If you give yourself away, what do you have left for you? And we are once again into that wonderful paradox of generosity. You cannot give out of an empty barrel. You have to start with yourself, filling yourself up with whatever it takes that enables you to be generous to yourself and with yourself. Are you committed to your own life? What are you doing to make it better, stronger, more stable? Are you taking care of your health? Are you eating the best foods, exercising to establish that strong core? Are you getting enough sleep so that your mind is clear? It's that easy. Have you made a commitment to yourself to build your spiritual understanding so that you might better understand other spirits, other people? Have you made a commitment to grow better relationships, first with yourself? Do you like yourself? Then with others as a way of supporting justice, equity, and compassion, seeking peace and liberty, finding truth and meaning. If you cannot answer yes to these questions, then what do you have to give? Where does your commitment come from? How does it become renewed? And this is where the power of community and covenant come in. They are both there to remind us of who we are and what we must do to become worthy of the inherent worth and dignity within ourselves that must be nourished and maintained if we are to be and do all the glorious things we know we are capable of. You see, only when we give to ourselves, make a commitment to be our best selves, can we begin to be a people of commitment that includes others, that has something to give to others. That's the first pound of golden coins to put on the scale. Now we're ready to give to others. And the question is, what is appropriate? You are probably familiar with the proverb, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. To be committed to something like compassion in your relationships, in your giving, it has to be appropriate. It has to be lasting. One of the sources listed in our covenant is wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us to our ethical and spiritual life. For the wisdom on appropriate giving, I turn to Buddhism, which has much to say on the topic. Here is a conversation on the subject by Buddhist nun Pema Chodron. She wrote, "Giving is essential to Buddhism. Giving includes charity or giving material help to people in want, but it also includes giving spiritual guidance to those who seek it and loving kindness to all who need it. However, one's motivation for giving to others is at least as important as what is given. What is the right or wrong motivation? Well, there are many motivations for giving, and they include being shamed or intimidated into giving, giving to receive a favor, giving to feel good about yourself. These are impure motivations. The Buddha taught that when we give to others, we give without expectation of reward. We give without attaching to either the gift or the recipient. We practice giving to release greed and self-clinging. The practice of giving is universally recognized as one of the most basic human virtues, a quality that testifies to the depth of one's humanity and one's capacity for self-transcendence. In the teaching of the Buddha, too, the practice of giving claims a place of special eminence, one which singles it out as being, in a sense, the foundation and seed of spiritual development. But it's important to remember that there is no giving without receiving, and no givers without receivers. Therefore, giving and receiving arise together. One is not possible without the other. Ultimately, giving and receiving, giver and receiver, are one. Giving and receiving with this understanding is the perfection of giving. So if you're committing to yourself, this is the first pound of gold coins that will free you from the cage of living an unfulfilled life. Then giving with the proper motivation might be considered the second pound of treasure. Now we're getting somewhere. And as J.P. Morgan once said, the first step toward getting somewhere is decide that you are not going to stay where you are. Every Sunday at this time, I usually give you a generosity report, what's happening with the finances of the church. But because this is the first day of stewardship, I'm going to offer a stewardship report. And Mary Kerwin is going to be the one to give us the first report. Every Sunday, we think about how we give to one another, what happens in this community. And today I'm going to let Mary tell you about what makes her generous in her giving.
Good morning. I'm Mary Kerwin, coming to you from home in Euless. I've been a member since 1994 when I joined with my husband, Kimmel. Together, we've raised our two now adult sons, Casey and Matt, in the church. And today I'm here to testify about why I pledged to support First Jefferson. It's almost been 1 year since we've been sheltering in place, in lockdown, in quarantine, staying at home. I've stayed healthy all year, and now I'm very grateful to be double vaccinated. Who knew a year ago what would evolve as far as church community and our activities go? I've actually stayed busy and involved, helping keep us afloat by working with the finance and the worship arts committees. I've really liked having our book club continue to read and meet on Zoom. I recently joined the name change committee, motivated to move the process forward and finish what we have started. I am in favor of changing our name to drop the Jefferson, but no matter the outcome, we need a fair and inclusive way to arrive at a decision that is this important. I'm coming off last weekend's SWU conference. That stands for Southwest Unitarian Universalist Women. As a board member of SWU, we spent many hours during the pandemic in meetings up to our eyeballs, trying to figure out how to recreate our annual conference on Zoom. It's made me think about some other denominational opportunities afforded to all of us by virtue of our membership at First Jefferson. One is the Texas UU Justice Ministry. It's an advocacy group of Texas congregations working to influence public policies and advance systemic changes in our state. In years past, but not this year, they've organized UUs statewide to visit Austin for lobby days at the state capitol. Executive Director Reverend Chuck Freeman filled our virtual pulpit in January to bring its message of bending Texas towards justice. And even more recently, just last week, Chuck and others joined a statewide press conference to denounce the negligence of our state leaders for the massive power failures during the winter storms. Another opportunity we have in front of us to get involved is the UU Ministry for Earth. If you're interested in centering climate and environmental justice to make a statement about who we can become as a church, this is somewhere we can pursue and direct our energy. Last November, the UU Ministry for Earth offered a week-long series of events online called Harvest the Power, a Justice Convergence and Teach-In. I was able to attend some of the sessions and thought that it offered a great model of virtual education and engagement. And I can't not mention that I pay a lot of attention to the news every day and the political climate in the country. There's a lot of disturbance in our systems, and I definitely think we're in the midst of a widespread attempt to overthrow our own democracy. As scary as that is, being part of a religious community that values democratic principles at its core is where I need to be. Fortunately, Kimmel and I will be able to increase our pledge to First Jefferson this year, as well as make donations to the groups that I've mentioned here today. Okay, so this just about covers it for me. I miss everyone, and I can't wait until we can be together in person at church. Until that time, good health and good spirits from me to you.
Thank you, Mary. Mary told me that the doggy conversation going on in the background was her grand dog encouraging her to look for more giving opportunities. I had to laugh when I heard it. I have two short readings this morning, one from Ralph Waldo Emerson called What Are We Worshiping? And he wrote, "A person will worship something. Have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for what we are worshiping, we are becoming." And the second reading is called The Struggle Continues by Israel Bufardi. He said, "The road that lies ahead of us is a long one, and the pace of progress will sometimes feel glacially slow. Never forget that glaciers over time can carve out grand canyons and great lakes. Moving tectonic plates can rise up mountains over millennia, or they can explode awe-inspiring volcanoes in milliseconds. Our commitment to love and justice can do the same." Let us sing again. Number hymn 28, Fire of Commitment. Dan?
From the fight of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, when our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call
Oh, your sound is so good. I love that song. Both the words and the music are so inspiring. But I want to take this opportunity to talk some more about the Stewardship Campaign. It's an annual event. It used to start with a free luncheon after the service on the first Sunday of March. Well, we can't repeat that ritual yet, but we can still celebrate our understanding of the campaign and our commitment to it. It begins about a month or two before this first Sunday with a planning and setting a budget for the coming year. You'll hear more about that later. Then the first request for commitment is asked of me, the minister, and the board of trustees, 7 dedicated members of the congregation who meet regularly to carry out the management of the church, monitor its goals and achievements, and direct its fiduciary responsibility. And then the campaign moves on to the rest of the membership and asks each individual member or friend how much they can commit to supporting the work of the church. And this work includes all of its programs, from educating children and youth, supporting the spiritual growth of all its members and friends, providing solace and support to those who need it, reaching out into the community around us to provide services of support, justice, and equity, fighting for individual and group rights of liberty and world community. Members of Unitarian and Universalist congregations in the past and today have been at the forefront of movements such as the abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, civil rights, gay and transgender rights, Black Lives Matter, liberty and freedom for all. Much of what we do here, what we give here, is continuing support of these movements. And our budget reflects these commitments, but it also includes supporting the church itself, keeping up the building and the grounds, paying its staff, and being committed to making the world a better place in which to live. This year, after a year of sheltering in place, of streaming our services, of meeting online rather than in person, we are looking forward to a more normal existence when the pandemic is over and we can get back to doing what we believe is important to do. And this is going to include rebuilding the membership, rebuilding the community itself, rebuilding the joy of being together, the celebration of covenant, the joy of music, the blessing of eating together, or simply being together. These too will require our support and commitment. And this year I have asked the Stewardship Committee, under the leadership of Dan Sexton, to add money to the budget for increased support of staff. Our dedicated staff has been the backbone of the congregation during this very difficult time of separation due to the pandemic. I can't even say it anymore. We will need them more than ever as we struggle to regain a new normal. And let me tell you just some of the burden that will fall to the staff in the coming months. For the past 40 years, our choir has been led by Roy Redman. Roy has retired and will be difficult to replace, not only for his skill and dedication, but because he has not in 40 years accepted 1 cent of remuneration for his work of rehearsing and leading the choir. We are not going to be able to find anyone as talented and generous as he, and we are adding a music director's salary to our budget. In the past, we have managed membership with a committee that provides greeters on Sunday morning, that welcome visitors and introduces them to the congregation, mentors them until they become a part of the larger community. But this job becomes more complicated as we move into the world of technology we now live in. It requires keeping up websites so that people can visit online as well as in person, supporting a new kind of membership and belonging, reaching out into the community to introduce ourselves, and many other job descriptions we never even imagined 5 or 10 years ago. Our talented and committed half-time church administrator, Carl Thibodeau, can do all of these things and has agreed to take on the added responsibility and commitment, but it will require an increase in his hours and therefore his pay, an increase that will more than compensate for what as we continue to grow. And finally, we have been supporting the teaching of our children and youth as well as our adults through our Religious Exploration Council, a group of volunteers dedicated and committed to our fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And we've been doing that with minimal staff help from our very, very part-time religious exploration educator, Thomas Earthman. And Thomas has skills and talents we have only recently discovered and begun to utilize. You've seen him as a storyteller. Sometimes he works with the team on recording the services. He's here doing the sound this morning. And he helps plan and lead the discussion for adult religious exploration. He needs a raise, and he needs to be able to give us more hours of his talents and his commitments. The board and I have asked the Stewardship Committee to include all of these people, as well as our pianist, in a larger budget request this year. And we are asking our members and friends to commit to supporting these strategies of growth and fair practices, to commit to our staff as much as they are committed to the community. And so the riddle grows, committing to yourself, committing with proper motivation, and choosing to commit to something larger than yourself. Now we have a measured 3 pounds of gold coins to put on the scale. 1 more pound to go. I don't have any stories about this personal community today to share with you in our communion of names and milestones. I'm sure they exist, but no one has told me about them. So I simply ask you to keep one another in your hearts and your minds, as you usually do when we continue on this rocky path of isolation. But there are other stories in the world, other histories and hopes to remember, cherish, and let guide us. And let me tell you some of these instead. On March 13th, we will celebrate the life of Susan B. Anthony, who died on this date, and honor her for the work she did to set women free from social bondage and give them the right to vote. March is also the 56th anniversary of the 3 marches from Selma to Montgomery, led by the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., among others, to demonstrate for the right of Black Americans to vote freely and without restraint. And it marks the death of several people who participated in those marches, 2 of them Unitarian Universalists. The Reverend James Reeb, who was murdered by 3 white men who beat him to death for marching with African Americans. And Viola Liuzzo, a member of the First Unitarian Church of Detroit, who was shot to death while being transported to the airport after the Selma to Montgomery march by a car full of Ku Klux Klan members who set out to punish white people who had dared to participate in this historic march. March is the 60th anniversary of the establishment of the Peace Corps, which includes International Women's Day tomorrow and Women's History Month all month. International Transgender Day of Visibility on March 31st is part of the season for nonviolence, which stretches from January 30th to April 4th. So let us keep all of these people and events in our hearts and minds as well. There is room for them all. Take a moment now, perhaps to close your eyes, to sit back, to consider what's going on in the world as well as your own life, as we take a moment for meditation in silence together, and then a musical meditation from our pianist. have a few more things to say about being a people of commitment, and there's one more person I want you to hear from this morning. The word commitment comes from 3 Latin word roots: com, meaning together, mit, meaning to send, and ment, meaning the result. It isn't something that is experienced in isolation, but with others and with all parts of ourselves. Commitment is an idea that has energy of its own, energy that gives us movement, sends us in a positive direction. And this energy is directed by choice and requires solidarity. Let me take these last 2 concepts separately. You have a choice to what you are committed to. You make that choice out of your own experiences and capabilities. From your experiences, your own life lessons, you begin to understand the values of compassion, of giving, of sharing, growing, and deepening. You understand the struggles of life out of your own struggles. And you understand the gifts of life out of your own experience with grace. What you receive from this life without asking for it or maybe even deserving it, but simply partake because you are alive. Your choices may be different from mine, from all others in the communities you share, but they are important nonetheless. When you consider the gifts that have been given to you, you choose to be grateful and give accordingly. But what if your life has been one of struggle and deprivation? Not all of us have been equally fortunate in what life has given us. And if that is true, you understand what might have been missing in your life, and you understand what others who are deprived wish they had in their lives. And if you are compassionate and wise, and if you have the ability, you choose to give out of that compassion and wisdom. Sit with yourself for a while and ponder these paradoxes, and then choose how you will go forward in your life of commitment and sharing. When the request comes to you from the Stewardship Committee, may your choices be good, and may they all be blessed. And I said commitment requires solidarity because it isn't something that is easily done alone. We make commitments to ourselves as dual parts of ourselves, and we make commitments to one another when we work for the greater good. Let me show you what I mean with a quote from Bell Hooks. In case you're not familiar with Bell's writing, Bell Hooks is a pseudonym for Gloria Jean Watkins, an American author, professor, feminist, and social activist. And she wrote this: "Solidarity is not the same as support. To experience solidarity, we must have a community of interests, shared beliefs, and goals around which to unite, to build sisterhood and brotherhood. Support can be occasional. It can be given and just as easily withdrawn, but solidarity, that requires sustained, ongoing commitment." That sounds like she's describing First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church, doesn't it? And then that kind of wraps up the 4th pound of gold coins, the toll for understanding commitment. But I haven't told you how to measure them using a 5 and a 3-gallon bucket, have I? Did you figure it out? Well, if you want more time, you can pause whatever device you're watching on and worshiping on, and then come back to see if you did it the same way I did. Okay, first you take the 3-pound bucket and scoop up 3 pounds of coins, and you pour those coins into the 5-pound bucket. And then you go back and scoop up another 3 pounds of coins, and you pour those into the 5-pound bucket until it's full. And now you have 1 pound of coins left in the 3-pound bucket. Okay, put that down. Go over and empty the 5-pound bucket. Come back and get the 1 pound of coins in the 3-pound bucket and pour it into the 5-pound bucket. And then scoop up another full 3 pounds bucket and pour it into the top. And you have 4 pounds of gold coins in the 5-pound bucket. Quickly, put it on the scale, and now you are free from the locked room, free to be a person of commitment, compassion, giving, solidarity, and love, which is a part of it all. And free to join in the closing hymn, number 10 in the great hymnal, Immortal Love. And now I'm excited to introduce our final guest to you, Dan Sexton, the chair of the Stewardship Committee, last year's board treasurer, and longtime member of First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church. Dan.
Good morning. This is Dan Sexton. I'm chair of the Stewardship Drive this year. I hope everyone's doing well. This has been a challenging year for the church, but I think this year's been a success. We didn't know what was coming, but the Sunday morning crew came together and has been giving us high quality services to sustain us. On the web, on YouTube, they've got it done. Guy Thornton bought his own equipment up to get it going. And then he built this great sound cabinet. Wait till you see it. And why would he do that? What did he hope to gain? Except the thanks and admiration of his loving church community. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about. Money. Money, money, money. The Finance Committee has developed a budget of $208,000, 208, and that's up 11% from last year. This budget includes money to start paying the full mortgage next March. The UUA is allowing us to do interest only now, but next March we'll be paying full principal. The new budget also includes a raise and additional hours for Carl and a raise for Thomas. Our staff, our valiant staff, have worked tirelessly through all this to keep us going. The pledge target to meet this budget is $153,000. That's an increase of $12,000 over the current year pledge budget. $1,000 a month, just about. Can we, between all of us, come up with an additional $1,000 in pledge income for next year? I think we can. And what can really make a difference is if everybody can do something. $10 a month can really help. We're going to do an email pledge drive this year, as well as mail out packets. This Sunday afternoon, you'll get an email from me that'll have a simple pledge form in the body of the email. When you're ready, you'll hit reply, type in your pledge information, and then hit send. I'll get that email printed out, and that'll be our pledge record. Next week, you'll get a packet in the mail that has a pledge card. If you'd like to fill out the card and mail it back in, that'll be fine. I have confidence in our church leadership. Sometime this fall, with Annie guiding us, Brian Skinner and the board leading us, we're going to open this church again. What a great day that'll be. The smell of the coffee, the choir in the background warming up, talk, laughter, kids running around. I ask you to think about all we've been through and how we've kept it going. I tell you, I will increase my pledge 10%. I will volunteer my time to keep this church going. I invite you to join me. Pledge your dollars, pledge your hours. Make this church the thriving place it should be. And what will you gain if you do that? The thanks and admiration of your loving church community. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you, Dan, for those inspiring words. I look forward to that day again when we are together. Our chalice is flamed, as I said earlier, for this home that we find here together, to which we make commitments, to which we make promises, covenants, and generous gifts. I extinguish it because I know it goes with you in your hearts and your mind. My benediction this morning, is from Stephen Covey. He wrote, "Anything less than a conscious commitment to the important is an unconscious commitment to the unimportant. So may it be in all our lives." God bless.